All right, the team is back. All right. Over on my right, we have Louis, the old man. We have Mike, who's getting old, and Adrian, who's definitely old. And behind the camera is David. He's our new, what should we say, subject? Our new person to torture. See, he's smiling, so he knows it's in fun. Allison is not joining us. She's coming in a bit later, and Nabil is also on his way. So anyway, good to have everybody back. After a long extended absence, I know lots of you have missed these two folks. I haven't. All right, so today we're actually going to cover the McIntosh C2800 tube preamp versus the equivalent solid-state version, the C55. Now, I did the C55 versus the previous version, the C53. Whoever's doing the editing will put the link in the description below so you can watch that if you want. Today, we're actually going to compare the two current versions. So the tube version versus the solid-state version. Now, for all intents and purposes, these are their top models until you go to the top of the line, the C12000. So I was actually very curious to see what the boys thought, and I've been pushing them to listen, and they finally had a chance. And so they're going to, as usual, as we did in the past, they're going to give you their thoughts. We have not shared or talked between each of us what we thought the sound was going to be like. And so for the first time, I'm going to hear what they thought. All right, what did we use? We used the Lumen U2 streamer. We used, obviously, both of the preamplifiers, and then a set of the McIntosh MC451 mono blocks. Now, these amps, just in case you don't know, there are actually two amps in one in each chassis. So you have a solid-state amplifier driving the bass, and you have a tube amplifier driving the mids and the highs. And the amplifier has the control for you to adjust for the crossover frequencies. The speakers are the Sonus Faber Amadis. So I believe with the Amadi, we had it adjusted for 275 hertz. All right, old man, go ahead.
Okay, firstly, I listened to the C2800. As usual, the Mac equipment, to me, is the best looking, aesthetically pleasing. Customers.
You say that to your kids? As usual, you're the best looking kid.
Aesthetically pleasing.
That's right.
Easy on the eye. Anyways, just to compliment McIntosh and their design, from time to time, clients will come in here and everyone just loves the look of Mac. So to me, it's unbeatable. Nothing else, I think, comes, looking as good as the Mac. And they're in business for 75 years. They would not be if the product wasn't good and it didn't look good. So anyways, so the first one I listened to was the C2800. We always play everything flat to listen, no boost in treble or bass or whatever it is. So the songs I started off with, Grover Washington, Take 5, his cover of Dave Brubeck's one of the greatest recorded jazz songs. His version is not really jazzy, but his saxophone is just melodic. Really, really very nicely done. It brings out a lot of bass in the recording, treble. To me, it sounded wonderful. Next track up I listened to was a cover by Gordon Goodwin, Big Fat Band, Sing Sang Sung, which is actually the recording of Benny Goodman's Sing Sing Sing, which was, I think, recorded somewhere 1936, I think. And but Goodwin had changed the name to Sing Sang Sung, and with it comes a lot of instrumentation, which brings out the details rather. The Sonus Faber was very complimentary with the equipment used. Fantastic. The G5 Amatis sounded wonderful on that track as well. Then I decided to go vocals, female and also male vocals, to see how the tube would respond. The first one I listened to was Dana Krall, a few of her tracks. The most important one I liked was a tune written by Hal David and Burt Bacharach, The Look of Love. Just a wonderful, it's such a good song that no matter who does it, it sounds wonderful. But I think for all the years I've listened to this track, I think her cover of it is by far the best. The warmth of her voice, the instrumentation, the piano, you could hear the striking of the hammers. It's just fantastic. Listen to a few other tracks. Sammy Davis Jr., I'm Not Anyone. That song was written by Paul Anka, our favorite Canadian out of Ottawa. He was a...
What, you don't like Trudeau? What's wrong with you?
no politics. But, Paul Anka did some wonderful songs, and he wrote this one because of... He thought that the prejudice... He was... Sammy Davis was so prejudiced, singing, growing up as an entertainer, couldn't go into certain places because he was black. But that song, I'm Not Anyone, was just fantastic. Another track I played for him, I must say I'm a Sammy Davis fan, was... what's the name of that track? Gosh. I'm aging myself here and having some senior moments.
Shelter.
The Shelter of Your Arms. Beautiful song, very great lyrics. The equipment just sounded so great. Then I went to another male vocalist. Some people may not like, but growing up back in the 60s and 70s, I loved the British soulful invasion, which was Tom Jones and Engelbert Humperdinck. So this Tom Jones song, A Minute of Your Time, if anybody knows this song, it's not very popular, played by Tom Jones, but it's a wonderful. Lyrics are fantastic, but it brought out his vocals was so powerful, and it was so pleasing to listen to. The smoothness of the tube preamp of the 2800 is just fantastic. I moved on to the C55, and wow, it came alive to me. Better instrumentation, quicker bass. It was not sibilant at all on male vocals or any of the tracks which I played. So I played in reverse order. So the last song I would play, of the 10 tracks which I listened to, I played it from 10 back to 1. So I'm trying to have oral memory here. So to be honest, listening right to the C55 right after the 2800, and trying, to pick out the differences. To me, I preferred the C55, the timbral accuracy, the voicing. I preferred that mix, but there will be a caveat I have later on when everybody is finished. Why I would choose the 2800 over the 55 in another situation, but that will come at the end when we're recapping.
Mike?
Interesting. I think you and I are gonna be very similar in our findings. My My first track is a guitarist called Lee Ritenour, session guitarist, also has lots of solo stuff, been around since I think maybe the late 60s. This is a song called The Village from the album The Rhythm Session. A very mellow song, no vocals. The lead guitar is a very, very mellow. It's got an effect on it, but it is extremely mellow, very, very soft. The song is very soft as well. I will say that I listened to these tracks a number of times on each unit and moved in between them. I didn't listen to all my tracks and then switch to the other amp because I found that there are differences, but they're more similar than they are different. They have a very similar tonal range. Depending on the track, sometimes it was a little bit difficult for me to tell the difference. There were certain things, if you were listening to something specific, you might be able to pick it out. So, the C55 I found was obviously not as smooth, with the 2800 being tubes. It seemed to, at least on this track, flatten the image a little bit. Lee Ritenour's guitar was not up front. It was a little bit more laid back. The 55 definitely had a much tighter bass on it. That was readily apparent. I still found myself gravitating toward the 2800, even though the bass was not as tight. The bass just seemed more. It had a plumpness to it that for me was more emotional, especially being a bassist.
Sorry, let me just rewind a little bit because it's quite interesting.
Sorry.
No. You did the right thing.
Yeah.
Just a few statements ago, you were saying that in terms of the bass, you found which?
The C55 was definitely more tight in the bass region, more articulate, more defined. The 2800, again, being tubes, the bass was nice and plump, and of course there's inaccuracies in tubes, and we know that they slow down the time domains of the frequencies, so it didn't matter. There was something emotional and engaging about this track on the 2800 that I immediately liked it better. Immediately. There was no question in my mind. I then moved on to the movie Whiplash, the title track Whiplash. Big band, very hot track, very
Incredible
hot
movie.
Horns,
Amazing
bombastic
movie.
drum. It's a great track.
Yeah.
You put this track on in the morning, you're going to wake up right away.
Yeah.
And again, the same conclusion. There seemed to be something engaging about the 2800. Nothing on paper or nothing tangible that I could say that the 2800 was better. The bass was not better. The bass was not as tight. There was less air. The C55 has more air. That's readily apparent. I found myself liking the 2800 better. I thought that although the song is very loud and the dynamic range isn't huge, I still found myself hearing a little bit more dynamics in the 2800. Imaging wise on this track, I didn't find too much of a difference. Again, it was an emotional thing. Everything told me that the C55 was doing a better job. It was clearer. The bass had a much more control on the C55. And again, I don't know why. I just gravitated toward the 2800. My next track is by a little known musician called Stevie Wonder.
Never heard of it.
For Once in My Life is the track. This song actually starts with a very, very soft guitar, and I think the drummer just might be fingering one of the toms, just for a little bit of percussion. There's lots of room tone at the beginning of this track. The room tone difference between the two amps was very apparent. On the C55, it was very upfront. It was very noticeable. On the 2800, it was very subdued. And again, because this track is so old, I think this track is from 68, maybe 67, around that time. It's not extremely full, even though the bassist is one of the best bassists ever, James Jamerson. It's one of the best bass lines ever recorded. Again, my findings, 55 was more controlled. The 2800 seemed a little bit fatter, and on this track, I think the fatness and the plumpness of the 2800 did help this song, because the song is quite a little bit thin. My last track is by a band from Germany with a Japanese singer from the mid-70s. The band is called Can. Have a listen to them. For some reason, they sound modern today. Like, they sound like an indie band that would have come out today. It's a very upfront recording. The drums are very upfront. The quality of the drums is very bright. If there are any drummers out there, the snare drum is more snare than the body of the snare. If there's drummers out there, they know what I'm talking about. The C55, I found it seemed a little bit sibilant on the drums. And I found because I listened to these songs about four to six times, I found myself getting a little bit fatigued on these drums. Compared to the 2800, again, smoothed it out. Just seemed a little bit more pleasing to my ears. There were certain things. There's a certain clarity to the 55, and I'll be honest, I could take either amp. On this track, the drums are very left-centric, but there's very faint reverb trails on the right side for the most part, the snare. The C55 handled it very nicely. It was very clear. It was very apparent that there were very soft, very subtle reverb trails on that side. And on the 2800, it was a little bit difficult to pick those small little details out. Again, this song is from the 70s. It didn't have the most full body. And I found myself liking the 2800 better. Even though everything I was listening to on the C55 told me this is a much more realistic rendition of these recordings, I still like the C2800 better.
That's a really good summary. All right, so it appears that Lewis, for the most part, prefers the C55 for the most part. Mike, for the most part, prefers the C2800. So let me see if I can be the tiebreaker. First, let me talk about the housekeeping stuff. Both preamplifiers cost $9,000 US or $12,600 Canadian. Obviously, the C2800's tubes, the C55 is solid state. For all intents and purposes, the features and feature set is identical, except the C55 has an 8-band EQ, and the C2800 has bass and treble only. They can both utilize the newly released app, which I haven't tried. Have you guys tried the app yet? And does it work?
It does work. It's
very simple. Yeah, I haven't tried it yet, so I'm gonna try that out later. All right. So before I start, let me just say the previous versions, the C2700 and the C53, overall I preferred the C2700. So in that sense, as a matter of fact, most of what Mike said was how I felt with the comparison between the two. I can't remember if Philip and or Jay felt the same. It's been so long, but for the most part, yes. The C53 was more transparent, more clear, gave me all the detail I wanted without being harsh. But the C2700 had that little roundness, more seductive and more romantic. And then, of course, I reviewed the C55, compared it to C53, and I thought, which is really weird, somehow I thought the C55 was a bit of a throwback. It's a bit warmer sounding than the C53. It had the romance almost of a tube, but not quite, and yet you still have all the clarity and detail, just like how Mike and Louis detailed. So then when I listened to the C20, well, let me just talk about this. Louis mentioned that he listened to the C28 first and then switched over to the C55. How did you do the comparison? Did you do it back to back?
Yeah, I would listen to the track about anywhere between 4 to 6 times. And again, I'm extremely familiar with these tracks.
Right.
But I listened
you
about
do
4
it
to
back,
6
back
times,
to back.
and then I would switch the amp and listen to it on the other one for about 4 to 6 times.
So you didn't listen to like 5 songs?
No.
Okay, good. So in that sense, I did a similar way as what Mike did. So I would listen to a track once or twice, and then I'd switch over to the other preamp and then switch back again a few times just to compare and to see if I heard similar things over and over again. And I did. So the cool thing is, much like what Mike found, the 2800 definitely has a nice romantic, well, just like what Louis found. You could listen to it all day long. There's nothing not to enjoy. It's so beguilingly beautiful. There's this seductive quality that just pulls you into the music, and didn't matter what you played. And I played all kinds of stuff, including guilty pleasures, which I will not mention because you guys will laugh at me saying that I would actually like this kind of music, but I did. But then when I switched over to the C55, I thought, wow, I'm hearing things I missed. I didn't quite hear with the 2800. And now I'm enjoying this too. And the interesting thing is that in both cases, my body was reacting. I was toe tapping. It wasn't like I'm hearing the detail, but then suddenly your body stopped reacting. And there are systems like that. I know most of you, if you've been doing this a while, you know what I'm talking about. You go to a hi-fi show, or you go to a friend's place, or even your home system, for example. You play it and you hear unbelievable, extraordinary details and so on, but you're not enjoying the music. If you're really honest with yourself, your mind is thinking, I wonder what's for dinner, and I got to cut the grass. I'm actually thinking what I have to do today too. Cut the grass, walk the dog. You're not involved in the music. In both cases, I was very much involved in music, but for the first moments of switching over to the solid-state preamplifier, it's like a veil is lifted and you go, I'm hearing this. I'm hearing more of this. And then your body starts reacting and you go, this is also still very enjoyable. So, and I would try a whole bunch of different recordings. And regardless of what I played, that was consistently the same result. Now, here's why I stopped Mike just now when he was saying about the bass, because I was wondering if he heard the same thing. And Louis didn't mention this, so I'm assuming maybe you didn't. When I played the C55, the solid-state version, bass was nice and tight, very articulate, very defined, and so on. And then I would switch over to the 2800, and suddenly I got this wallop of bass. Did you hear that? That's why I was wondering. I stopped you and going, I wonder if you heard that. It's almost as if somebody took the tone control, increased the bass, and it was so apparent. I thought, I wonder if we turned on the tone control by accident. Maybe, and I looked at the lights are off. If you engage the tone control, a little LED comes on. But I thought, well, it's possible that maybe the light broke. It's factory, who knows? And maybe one of the guys went in and adjusted the bass and forgot to turn it back off. So I went into the settings and checked, and no, the bass is flat. And yet it's very clear, very obvious that there was a whole lot more bass, whole lot more. It's not a subtle thing. And I was so surprised. Mike is right. It's not quite as detailed. It's not quite as tight. But boy, is it fun.
Plump. It's rated plump. Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah.
And that added even more joy and more fun to listening to the C2800. But there's no question that the solid-state version is more true. And the bass comes out, it's tight, it's defined, and it stops. It doesn't go on for quite a while. But which one is more fun in terms of the bass anyway? The tube version. So here's an example. Janelle Monáe, I've mentioned her many times before. The bass is, I said, more powerful and more visceral through the 2800. The 2800 is more enjoyable on this track. The other thing about the soundstage, so the 2800 seemed to have more of a wraparound, more three-dimensional, not quite as defined, not quite as clear. The C55 is definitely more clear. Mike mentioned this. The images were more sharply defined, whereas the 2800 was maybe a little bit more murky, but more wraparound. So an example in this case was Madonna's Vogue Q sound version. So about a minute into the song, maybe suddenly you start hearing sounds from behind you with the tube version, and with the solid state it's slightly more forward. And I was so surprised by this. I played it multiple times just to see, and sure enough, the 2800 was more wraparound, more fun. Real or not, it's Q sound, it's not real, but it was more fun. So in that sense, so far it's 2-0, right? Then I played Paul McCartney's Mother Nature's Son. It's a wonderful piece of music I love to play, the anthology version, and this is the first time the C53 for me, C55, the solid state version for me, won out. Simple recording, Paul McCartney playing guitar. That's it, nothing else. And then because the solid state version still has a bit of warmth, still has that romantic character, I enjoyed that. But I could also hear the clarity of the strings better. I could hear his articulation better. I could hear his vocal trills better. With the tube version, I just got this beautiful sound, but I missed some of that detail and clarity. So this is the first time for me the solid state version won out. So it's 2-1. I'll give you one last one. John Coltrane, Blue Train. One of my favorite albums of all time. John Coltrane was a phenomenal musician. One of the jazz greats of all, just phenomenal. Started off playing trumpet and then alto saxophone, and then finally started playing tenor. And on this cut, he plays tenor, and it's recorded by the great Rudy Van Gelder. And with the tube preamplifier, everything sounds beautiful. It's a 50s, 60s recording. It's a sweet, very smooth, slightly murky sound and so on. I switch over to the C55, the solid state version, and suddenly it comes to life. I hear the instrumentation better. I hear the details better. Now, why is this important? Well, in this case, I'm listening to giants, greats of all time. Every player is phenomenal, and I can hear them all play. Is this important? Yes, because I want to hear them all play. I don't just want to hear sort of background music. What did we used to call elevator music?
Elevator music.
No, but there was a company that used to provide the tracks all the time.
Yeah.
Anyway, it doesn't matter. I don't want it. This is one of those albums where when I play it, I want to play it. I want to turn it up. I want to enjoy it. I want to feel it. I want to hear the genius of all the different instruments, the musicians. And in this case, again, the C55 won me out. Was it a huge difference, as both of them pointed out? No. It wasn't a huge difference. There's far more similarities. I think the three of us would agree. Far more similarities between the two of these units than differences. We're not comparing D'Agostino versus McIntosh or Griffin versus the completely different. They're much more similar, but these differences were what I enjoyed hearing. For me, ultimately, for now, I prefer the C55, and by a small margin, primarily because the C55 is warm enough. It's not missing its romantic characteristic. And it also has that clarity. But boy, I wish it had that plump bass. It's. I was gonna be rude, but I won't. For those of you guys who are watching and know about the bottom, the fullness of the bottom as opposed to the skinny bottoms, you'll know what I'm talking about. Mike doesn't know anything about this. He's Italian.
No, neither.
Italians don't know anything about nice rich bottoms. Yes, I'm stereotyping, and yes, you can call me racist. My guys know. Well, so anyway, that's my thought. What do you guys think?
So my caveat is listening to the 55 on the McIntosh Power Amp 462. I preferred the 2800. But when it came to the hybrids, I chose the C55. With my diminished hearing at my age, the loss of detail. Definitely the C55 does it for me. But as I said, listening to the C2800 with the 462 power amp, that's what I would go with, because it smooths out if there was any bad recording digitally. It would definitely do a much better job than the C55. I've heard both, so that was my caveat, that it depends on what you're matching it up with. But as I said, with my diminished hearing, give me the 55 with this.
You're right. I don't know
this.
if we've had this.
I have
this combo, have we?
Yeah, no, not the combo.
Ones with the Amadis. Well, I know the amps. Obviously, the amps are new. The C2700 and the C53 lived in here
for a long time.
Yeah, they're perennial favorites.
That's right. And you know what's interesting? If I think about units in terms of popularity, by far the 2700. Oh, yeah. I mean, for every C53 we sold dozens.
Yeah.
Dozens maybe in a stretch, but a lot more 2700s.
Yes.
People love the 2700. And understandably, it's such a beautiful sound, and same with the 2800. And I wouldn't be surprised if this generation is the same again. And the other thing, of course, the nice thing about tubes is that it comes with factory, very good quality tubes. But for those of you who are really into tubes, you can buy aftermarket, different brand tubes, stick them in, and get a completely different sound, and do some tube rolling and see if you might enjoy that. But any last words? We got to wrap up.
2 thumbs up for both of them. We may choose or say we'd like one over the other, but it is very similar than different.
Yeah, Adrian's right. He said exactly what we were thinking. They're much more similar than they are different.
Much more similar than different. You have to be really on top, listening and wanting to find something to differentiate them.
With the exception of that plump bass.
Yeah, well, tubes will give you a plump bass because it's not going to be fast. You know what I mean? But when we say plump
bass.
When we say plump, it's not that it's that much slower. It's just that
it's not slow.
It's richer.
Yeah.
So but as I said, my caveat is if I'm listening to a fully solid state, give me the 2800.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Yeah. Mike, similar?
Yeah. I could go with either of these amps.
Preamps.
Preamps. I think that just emotionally, the 2800 just edged out the 55 just by a little bit.
Yeah. Well, you have it from the boys. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll do more of these for you in the future. So subscribe if you haven't already. Turn on notifications. Share with your friends. And we would love to read your comments. At least I do. I love reading your comments. My wife reads the comments and oftentimes wants to slag the rest of the people who, I tell you, I have to hold her back. So stop reading comments. Oh, these people, what are they talking about? Anyway, go ahead, slag us. It's fun. We enjoy it. And if you've heard these two, we'd love to hear comments. If you heard the previous generation, the C2700 versus the C53, what did you think? If you own any of these, let us know what your thoughts are. Anyway, thanks for watching. Take care. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.